Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Tvameva Vidya Dravinam, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So we're in the section on, I think Swamiji titles this section Aids to Meditation. And it's a series of verses that end with the frame, that thou art, meditate on this in your mind. And where did we stop last week? Does someone remember?
We're starting on 262 right now.
262. So Puneet, will you help us out, please?
Sure. Yad vibhati sadakeda brahma nama rupa guni vikriyatmana hemat vatsvayam vivikriyam sada brahmam tattvam asi bhavyatmani. That one reality which appears variously because of delusion, though itself always unchanged, and assumes names and forms, qualities and changes like gold through all its modifications, that Brahman thou art. Meditate on this in your mind.
So here is this seeming impossibility. How is it that consciousness, which is one without a second, there is no otherness, seemingly forks into subject object. But these objects are nothing but consciousness appearing as name and form. And here he uses the classic image, just like all ornaments are nothing but gold. The material cause of the ornaments is gold. So also all the things and beings, gross in the phenomenal world and subtle, all the ideas and feelings are nothing but consciousness appearing as that. So it's all Maya. No reason to get upset. No reason to get involved. So let's review clearly what has happened to the mind of the ignorant. What we have is what's called anyonya adhyas, mutual superimposition. So not only have I superimposed upon myself the qualities of the not self, I think I'm my body, or I think I'm my body plus some personality. I'm not the body, not the prana, not the mind, not the intellect, not the vasanas. But I've superimposed upon the world, I have externalized my own self-nature. So that person over there has existence separate from me. That person has consciousness separate from me, and I don't like their consciousness. And most importantly, I have externalized Ananda. That person can make me happy, and that person makes me sad. And again, this whole idea becomes easy to understand if we go to the dream state. All the people, places, things, and situations in the dream, plus the dream body and the dream ego, all the dream thoughts and feelings are not separate from my mind. It is my mind itself appearing as a world of name and form. This is no different. All is Maya. All is bliss. Next verse.
Yachakastya na param paratparam pratyagekara samatma alakshanam satya chitsukham ananta avyayam brahma tatvam asi bhavyatma ani. That beyond which there is nothing, which is above Maya, which is superior to its effects, the universe, which is the innermost subjective self, which is of one essence, which is continuous existence, knowledge, bliss, which is infinite and immutable, that Brahman thou art. Meditate on this in your mind.
So first idea, repeat it for me again, please.
That beyond which there is nothing.
Yes. So we have this movement, as it were, more and more subtle, or more and more interior. More subtle than the body is the prana. More subtle than the prana is the manomaya kosha. More subtle than the manomaya kosha is the vijnanamaya kosha. More subtle than the vijnanamaya kosha is the anandamaya kosha. More subtle than the anandamaya kosha is the atma. What's more subtle than the atma? Well, think. Well, what about the self beyond the self? Well, who's going to know it? The buck stops here. That by which everything is known, without which nothing can be known, beyond which there is nothing that can be known, It is the context for the whole phenomenal world. Next idea.
Which is above Maya, which is superior to its effects.
The universe, yes. So the effect of Maya is the universe. So even though the universe is Brahman, appearing as a world of name and form, because of Maya, Maya never touches the self. Now, there's a practice that's implied here. As you're going through the day and you're an ordinary mind, stop every so often. Whatever's happened, something good. Okay, did that touch me? No. I'm still the witness. Something terrible happens and you react. Okay. I wasn't the situation. I'm not the reactive feelings. I'm still just the witnessing consciousness. You prove whether or not you are superior to Maya and its effects. Even if you lose knowledge of yourself and you get all identified, and then an hour later you come to, oh yeah, I am Brahman. Did that ignorance touch you? No. The scriptures say this, but you must prove it in the laboratory of your own experience. Next idea.
Which is superior to its effects.
Yes, we talked about that.
The universe, which is the innermost subjective self.
So no, which is superior to its effects, the universe goes with it, goes with that one, and which is superior to its effects.
Right.
Yes.
So the idea is which is the innermost subjective self.
Yes. So it's you. It's your very experience of I. How do you know you are you? You are self-evident, self-shining, self-luminous. You are not a zero. You are Purnam. You are full. What am I full of? Me. You are a conscious, sentient being. And then that's the last idea other than the refrain, right?
There's another one, which is of one essence.
Yes. Yes. So it isn't divided up into parts. Pure existence, Sat. Pure awareness, Chit. And bliss absolute, empty and vast. All right, next one.
There's a couple more ideas.
I lied.
Which is continuous existence, knowledge, bliss.
Yes. So it never ends. It never starts. It's always there, and it's always now, now, now. Oh, Jim, I had a terrible day yesterday. Between 1:15 and 1:40, I stopped selfing. Never happens. You are always you. You have absolutely no experience of any hiatus, any break in being. Is that the last idea? Is there one more?
One more, which is infinite and immutable.
Yes. It's infinite. How big are you? Where do you stop? Where do you start? And you never mutate. You never change. You're not like a COVID variant. Or the Hebrew scripture says, I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. It's true about you. All right, next verse.
Uktam artham imamani swayam bhavayet prati tayukti bidhirya sanshayadirahitam karamba bhuvat ten tattva nigamo bhavishyati. One must meditate with the intellect in one's heart on the truth inculcated above by means of scriptural arguments. By these means, one will realize the truth without any doubts and the like, just like water in the hollow of one's hand.
So when the water is in your hand, it is directly there. Aha, see it, it's wet. So we have the indirect knowledge, which we get from scripture, which we get from the teacher, which give us the way to think. This radical reversal of the attentive faculty in a mind made very pure and sattvic. In the space between your thoughts. Who is it who knows the thoughts and the space between your thoughts? You find out. That's the direct experience. And then the subtle intellect goes, there's nobody there. Yet I am. Was that 266?
264.
264. All right, 265.
Swabhodhamatram parishuddhatatvam vigyaya sanghe nripavaccha sanye tadashraya swatmani sarvadasthito vilapaye brahmani vishvajatam. In this cause-effect bundle, realizing knowledge absolute free from ignorance and its effects, like the king in an army, and resting in that knowledge ever established in your own self, merge the universe into Brahman.
Yes. So, not after you die, but in this very body. With a very subtle intellect, in the cave of the heart, that quiet, quiet place where all thought has ended and all struggle has ended. Realize that which is at the very center. So the idea here is, in the ancient time, the king would be in his chariot, he would have his banner, the army would be out there doing all that stuff, but the king's in the center. He, in essence, is the cause of all of it, but he himself does nothing. One of my favorite images, like the eye of the cyclone. The whole universe is spinning around, but I am completely still. Realize that as yourself and live from that place. Any thoughts about this?
Are they mentioning the Akasa of the heart at all in this part? Because there's reference to that in what I'm reading.
Okay,
in the same
this
parts
is
in the
a
heart.
metaphor. Do not take, it's a good question, Justin.
Okay.
The space of the heart or the cave of the heart is a metaphor.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean something geographically located in your chest. Although there are upasanas, we had a discussion about that word. There are meditative practices that say, visualize this or that. What it means is your spiritual heart is when the intellect is completely free from thought and the feeling nature, the emotions, where you've given up all struggle, it's where everything is quiet. That we call the hridaya, the spiritual heart. And yes, it's referenced in most of the scriptures.
They're talking about it in the Chandogya. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Thanks.
No, it's a good question. But the problem is, for example, if you study Kathopanishad, at the end it will say, meditate on the self like a flame the size of your thumb in the heart. And people are getting all their intention and they're saying, oh, do I see a little flame inside my chest? No. I mean, those are visualizations for very basic practice. But there's a deeper meaning to it. There's a deeper meaning to it. Part of it is the ancients thought that the seat of intelligence was the heart, mainly because of the way people gesture. Most people, when they say, oh, is that you, Jim? When you indicate yourself, you don't go, yes, I'm Jim, or yes, I'm Jim. You go, yeah, I'm Jim. People tend to gesture to their heart center. So the ancients in many cultures thought that the physiological seat of the self was in the body. But that's not what the deeper meaning is. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, it's cool. Thanks.
All right, next one.
Buddha guhayam chadasadvilakshanam brahmasti satyam paramadvitiyam tadatmanayotra vased guhayam punarna tasyanga gaguha praveshaha. In the cave of the intellect is Brahman, other than the gross and the subtle, existence supreme and non-dual. He no more enters the mother's womb who dwells in this cave as Brahman.
So here is using another image drawn from the Upanishads, the cave of the intellect. So the way I like to explain it, if you go see a bat cave, the cave is context, the content is bats. If you go to a bear cave, the bear is content, the cave is context. So what's the cave of the intellect? It's the place where subtle thought happens. So when you've gotten quiet enough, when you can watch a thought arise, rise and exist, and then descend back into silence. And there's space between your thoughts. You see that the thoughts rise, exist, and fall in pure awareness. So the context for my thought is pure awareness. So that's the implied meaning of the cave of the intellect. Another poetic way of saying, like in the cave of the heart or in the heart. These are all metaphors to somehow indicate that ground of being where thought, feeling, and perception occur. Who am I? What's my essential nature? And that self in me and Brahman, the ground of being of the universe, they are the same. Which number was that one? Punit 265?
That's 266.
266. Okay. This next one is absolutely one of the most important verses. Now, what happens, many of us, when we get to this point in our practice, there are times when we absolutely know, yeah, I am that witnessing consciousness. I know it. But somehow I lose it. It's what I sometimes call the yo-yo state. Sometimes I know, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I know, sometimes I don't. You come to satsang, you get really quiet. It's all very clear. By the time you get to your car, you're all deluded again. Why? What happened? Anybody know this state? Let's do verse 267 and find out about it.
Gyate vastunyapi balavati vasananadiresha karta bhoktapya hammiti dhrida yasya sansara hetuhu pratyak drishyatmani nivasata sapaneya prayatnan muktim prahyustadiha munayo vasanatanavam yat. Even after the realization of truth, there remains a powerful, beginningless, deep impression that one is the doer and the enjoyer, which is the cause for rebirth. By living in a subjective state of steady identification with the self, it has to be conscientiously removed. That which is the annihilation of the vasanas here and now is called liberation by the sages.
Yes, yes. So even after I have that deep insight, I know who I am, but I forget. Even after realization of this truth, there exists a strong impression, a deep vasana, that one is the doer and the enjoyer, sense of agency. And here Shankara says, which is the cause for rebirth. Here what he means is, I get identified again. I think I'm Jim with all my problems. And then he says, this needs to be conscientiously rooted out, removed. How? Through steady and continuous identification with the self. Whenever I think I'm a person, ego will say, resolve the struggle of ego. Change the world or change me. Shankara is saying, drop the struggler. To whom is all this craziness occurring to me? Who am I? Or the meditation that my friend Justin gave me, which I just love. Who cares? That's only the ego. Drop it. Drop it. And steady wisdom, liberation, is the annihilation of the vasanas. What is a vasana? It's an impression left in the unconscious as the result of previously performed egoistic actions. A vasana has two powers: avarana shakti, vikshepa shakti. Avarana shakti, veiling power. How do I know that I'm under the influence of vasana? Because I think I'm a person. Meaning I have the non-apprehension of myself as Brahman. Varana Shakti. And then Vikshepa Shakti. I'm Jim, and there's that mean, awful world that afflicts me so badly. How do I remove the vasana? How do I remove ignorance? What is the antidote to ignorance? One of the first ideas we covered in the beginning of the book.
Knowledge.
Yes. How many times have I done this? I'm thinking of a song lyric. Do you know what song lyric I'm thinking of?
Yellow submarine.
You don't know. So I will tell you, we all live in a yellow submarine. Now you know. Knowledge dispels ignorance. How do I get rid of vasana? By knowledge of myself. So when the mind is covered by ignorance, the way out is to turn the mind back on its source and remember who I am. Then drop the struggle. Yeah, but what about my life? Don't I need to be worried about this stuff? No. Don't worry about it. Your own prarabdha karma will take care of it. You are not needed as an ego. Yeah, but this is important. No, that is what you're attached to. What about my honor, my pride? Drop it. Even after realization of the truth, there exists a strong impression that one is the doer, the enjoyer, the sense of agency, which is the cause for rebirth, which is the cause for re-identification. It needs to be conscientiously removed so that we have stita prajna, steady wisdom, not Swiss cheese wisdom. How do I do that? Through steady and continuous identification with the self. Annihilation of the vasanas, here and now, is termed liberation by the wise. Incredibly important verse. Any thoughts, any questions on this? I recommend that you commit it to memory, because it will answer lots of questions when you're having problems in your life.
Jim, I have a question. This is David.
Hi, David.
Hey there. So I wanted to see if you could expand on to have it be continuous. Does continuous really mean continuous, like it never has any breaks, and I have to always be tuned up every moment?
Yep.
Of waking? Okay.
But being tuned up, think of it this way. Do you ever doubt that your body is a human body? Do you wake up in the morning with the doubt that you're a goat or a cow or a horse or a pig?
No.
It's your constant, effortless, continuous knowledge of your human body. You don't have dysphoria. You know, maybe you've known people who have anorexia and they look in the mirror and what they see is a fat person, even though they're skin and bones. So they need to work on constantly reminding themselves, no, 130 pounds is a good weight for me, not 60 pounds. You know, they have to work with their mind. Their mind deludes them. So we have a spiritual dysphoria. What we are is Brahman. But what I think I am is a body with breath in my nostrils. Now, we've talked about how Maya or ignorance is beginningless. It's not just that it's very old. It means that you never see it come upon your mind. For example, a dream is beginningless. If Gloria goes to bed before you, and you come in later and she's asleep, and you look down and you see her eyes going like that, you know, she's having REM, rapid eye movement. Oh, Gloria's dreaming. You can see the beginning of her dream from the outside. But when we're in the dream, they don't roll the credits at the beginning of a dream. You assume a cause and effect past. It has a beginningless quality to it. Like you're in it and you never even think how you got there. Do you know you catching the taste of what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense.
Egoism is identical. You never see it come upon your mind. It has no beginning, but it has an end. How do I get out of it then? You have to drill into your mind. If I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. Stop. Remember who you are. Oh yeah. Just needs to be a click. And all of a sudden everything will shift. Does that make it a little clearer?
It makes it somewhat clear. I guess my next thought here is like, if I'm going to be functioning in the world,
Why don't you leave that up to the Lord?
what's that?
You can leave that up to the Lord. Knowledge of the self is not inconsistent with the activity of the body, mind, intellect in any way, shape, or form. I'll prove it to you. So if you right here, while we're here on Zoom, just like tune up your mind and you become aware of that vast background, that emptiness. Do you have a sense of it?
Yes.
Now move your hand. Did it go away? Did it?
It feels like it did a little bit. Yeah.
Who was aware of your hand moving?
I was.
Yeah. Don't confuse some like state of the mind. Do you ever disappear?
No.
Yeah.
Well, I never disappear, but I mean, in that sense that I was always here, before, before coming into contact with this wonderful book, though, right?
You've always been there. You know, that you are the self has never been the problem. It's the confusion of the mind. Both bondage and liberation occur to the mind. There is no other bondage than the deeply rooted conviction that I'm bound, meaning I think I'm my body. And this world sucks. There is no other liberation than the deeply rooted conviction based on direct experience. I'm not my body. I'm the ground of being. I'm Brahman. Now, neither mind state touches you. Self is ever free.
Right. The self is fine. It's just this mind believing itself, right?
Why does the mind get so screwed up? Because it's deluded. It forgets. It begins to think that ahankara, the ego sense, is the self. Don't you know who I am? What's going to happen to me? How am I going to do X, Y, Z? And then what you got to do is stop. Oh, wait a minute. Does any of this ever touch me? No. Bring your attention into the now. Now, from here on, Shankar is going to give us some aids how to root out vasana. But I want us to understand the frame that we're dealing with in this next section, this giving up of vasana. Even after realization of the truth, there exists a strong, beginningless impression that one is the doer and the enjoyer, which is the cause for re-identification, for rebirth. Needs to be removed conscientiously through steady and continuous identification with the self. It's the annihilation of the vasanas that brings about freedom. All right, 268.
Aham mameti yo bhavo dehakshata vanatmani adhyasoyam nirastavyo vidusha swatmanishtaya. I and mine, this notion in the body, sense organs, etc., which are the not self, this superimposition, the wise man must end by identification with his own self.
Yes. So all this I-ness and my-ness, give it up. Let go of attachment and identification. It's always associated with the body. I am none of that. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Next one.
Gyatva swam pratyagatmanam buddhi tatvritti sakshinam soham ityeva sadvritya natmananyatmamim jahi. Realizing your innermost self as the witness of the intellect and its disturbances, and ever maintaining the thought that I am, shed your identification with the not self.
So here, Shankara acknowledges your intellect will have its disturbances. You are the witness of the body, mind, and the intellect, and especially its agitations. When the situation is conducive, the mind and intellect are happy. When the situation is non-conducive, the mind and intellect are unhappy. It's so boring and it's so mechanical and it's so repetitive. Don't believe me. Just look to your week. Did you get upset this week? Tell me this is the first time you got upset. And whatever it was you got upset at, the names and faces may change, but tell me this is the first time you've ever gotten upset at something like that. I mean, when are you going to let it go? Nothing in this world is important enough for you to lose your peace of mind. Make peace of mind your most important possession. Yeah, but isn't that irresponsible? Don't I need to worry? No. Well, won't I act? Will I just stop acting? Will I be a slug at home? No, probably you'll get up and go to work. Take care of your family, etc. Action is independent of all this. Let the force of the past determine what the body does. Let the body act according to what's appropriate for circumstances. If you must have a rule, don't be a jerk. That's a lot. But you stay in the viewpoint of the witness, untouched, uninvolved, inviolate. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
लोकानुवर्तनं त्यक्त्वा त्यक्त्वा देहानुवर्तनं शास्त्रानुवर्तनं त्यक्त्वा स्वाध्यायासापनयं कुरु. Leaving your involvement with social formalities, leaving all ideas of beautifying the body, leaving aside unnecessary study of the Shastras, banning the superimposition which has crept up on the self. Banish the superimposition which has crept up on the self.
So when we come to this stage in our sadhana, for many of us, our lifestyle starts to change. What Shankara is saying is give up, what do the kids call it? FOMO, is that right? Fear of missing out. Drop it. That doesn't mean you don't fulfill your social obligations. You know, if your father is having a puja for his 65th birthday, you go. Or if your grandmother dies, you go to the funeral. But you give up this unnecessary social stuff. Giving up concern for the world. Do you go to work? If you've got a job, go to work. Do your duty. In terms of the body, I like to use the metaphor, think of it like a car. Keep it washed, change the tires, rotate the tires, change the oil, care for the body, keep it healthy. What should I wear? Wear what's appropriate to your position and station in life. That's different than going on, what is the station, QVC, where they buy all the jewelry, stuff like that. Don't worry about it. Be appropriate. And give up unnecessary study of the scripture. This is a subtle one. The scriptures classify vasana into 3 categories. The first is deho vasana. Vasanas of the body, being fed and fondled and rubbed and all that kind of stuff. These physiological pleasures. Then there's loka vasana. Loka means world or people. These are our social interactions, approval, dealing with loneliness, belongings, relationships, all that kind of stuff. That's loka vasana. The third is what we call shastra vasana, which means unnecessary study of the scripture. What the deeper meaning of it is trying to figure stuff out. As if I read enough books, I'm going to be able to understand it. And it's unfigureoutable in the end. So we study the scriptures enough to impel us into practice. But the person who just reads a lot of scripture and commentary and spiritual books has no meditative practice and does not practice vairagya will be little more than a scholar. They might have a philosophy that might make them a good person, but they will not be women of wisdom. So set all that stuff aside. Tune up the mind. Keep it intensely introverted. Steady and continuous identification with the sound. Next one.
Loka vasanaya janto, shastra vasanayapi cha, deha vasanaya jnanam, yatha vannaiva jayate. People cannot attain realization because of their desire to run after the world, their thirst for unnecessary study of the Shastras, and their anxiety to pamper the body.
Well, what do you know? I must have read this book before. So here Shankara talks about those three levels of vasana. Going after the world, lokavasana. Trying to figure stuff out in unnecessary study of the scriptures, shastra vasana. Pampering the body, deha vasana. Next one.
Sansarakara grihamokshamicho rayo mayam pada nibandha shrikhalam vadanti tyajya patu vasanatrayam yosmad vimukta samapauti muktam. The wise have spoken of three kinds of vasanas as iron chains shackling the feet for her who wishes to be liberated from the prison house of this world. She who is free from them attains liberation.
So it is these attachments, these vasanas, that keep us bound. And it is absolute. Well, Jim, I know all the rishis were householders. Can't I just go ahead? It's okay to be married and stuff like that. Of course. But the problem is not the world. The problem is attachment. Oh, if only it were easy enough to just get rid of all the objects. I haven't told this story in a while. Some of you may have heard it before. But in 1993, I was in the Mumbai ashram of the Chinmaya mission with all the brahmacharis. And when you go in for the men, you get a dhoti and a kurta, and you get your head shaved, and you have a little choti in the back. The women have white saris. They get to keep their hair. But you have nothing. You have one set of clothing that you wear, one that is in the laundry, one that's drying on the line. That's it. Inside your room, there's a little metal bed with a thin cotton mattress. There's a dresser, and there's a small desk and a chair. It's all that. And then you have a rubber bucket, and you live out of a rubber bucket. You use the rubber bucket to wash yourself in. You use the rubber bucket to wash your clothes in. You use the rubber bucket to wash out your room. You live in a rubber bucket. So one day, there was this one brahmachari, and he was all upset because another one of the brahmacharis had used his bucket So he'd gotten rid of all these objects, all his toys, but he still had I-ness and minus. And it had all been reduced to a rubber bucket. And he's still not upset. So the presence or the absence of the objects, leave that to the Lord. Be content with what you have. Wherever you're placed in your life, do your duty. But let go, let go, let go. Let go of the attachment. One more.
Jala disangsar gavashat prabhuta durgandhadhuta gurudevya vasana sangharshanenaiva vibhati ramya vignidhuyamane sati bahya gandhe. The captivating fragrance of the agochulum, which gets enveloped by an insufferable stink created by its contact with water, again manifests itself as soon as the enveloping smell is entirely removed by scrubbing.
So what he's talking about is sandalwood. So in the forests, they have the trees that are sandalwood trees. And in ancient times, what they would be to cut them down. And then they would float them down river to the place where they would be milled. And for carving into idols or used in architecture or anything like that. So as these logs are coming down river, the bark soaks up the river water. And even though sandalwood paste and stuff like that is quite fragrant, when it's been in the river for a long time, it stinks, the outside mildews. So it's just, it's this awful smell. So what you have to do is, I guess they call it an adze, but it's an instrument that's used to scrape off the bark that's gotten soaked. And then underneath, after you've gotten all the mildewy and stinky bark off, underneath is this fragrant sandalwood, which then is quite beautiful. So it's the metaphor for us. Your mind and my mind stinks. So what you would say are stinking vasanas. My vulgarities, my attachments, my reactions, my lust, my anger, my envy, my jealousy, my ambition, my hurt feelings, my resentments, regrets for the past, my self-pity, my fear of the future. All of that stinks. And it covers the incredible fragrance of the awakened mind. So our job is to scrape it off. Get over it. Give it up. Viveka and Vairagya. And then what's underneath is something incredibly perfumed and fragrant, the liberated personality. Beautiful, beautiful image. All right, we'll stop here tonight. What verse will we take up next week?
274. Actually, I was supposed to do this one with the previous verse. It was a continuation, but I didn't do it.
Well, we'll figure it out next week. Did we skip the previous verse by accident?
No, I just didn't do the one which was after, immediately after.
All right. I didn't either. All right, we have time for some questions. Very important section. Even after realization of the truth, there exists a strong impression that one is the doer and the enjoyer, which is the cause for rebirth. It needs to be conscientiously rooted out through steady and continuous identification with the self. Annihilation of the vasanas, here and now, is considered liberation by the wise. Very important idea. Answers lots of questions.
Jim, there's something else that's been on my mind I wanted to ask you about.
Please.
This is David again. One thing that's been coming up for me in the last couple weeks is, as we've been talking about the phenomenal world also being a, as it were, a dream, a projection onto the substratum of pure homogeneous consciousness. I just find myself getting very, very agitated, and I feel like I guess what's servicing is like a very strong attachment to my family, and this idea that if this world out there is somehow like a dream, then like if that dream goes away, then I'll lose them.
Well,
I just that's just been coming up for me
and you do have to give up attachment to the family. But let's analyze this. So you love your wife and your children, right?
Yes.
Do you love your parents?
Sometimes.
Do you love your grandparents?
Well, they're dead.
Do you love your great-grandparents?
No, I never met them.
You're related to them.
I feel grateful to them, but I don't know if I would say I love them because I never met them.
Of course not. You never met them. So it isn't the relatedness. What is it that causes you to have this deep connection to Gloria and the kids? And it is possible to love without attachment. Now, don't go looking for trouble. I'm not suggesting that you leave your wife and children and go live in the Himalayas.
I'm clear on that.
You have your duty. You have a duty to your family to provide for them, to care for them, to give them the attention and the affection that they need and deserve. but be mindful of the fact that the day, how old are the kids now?
5 and 8.
My God, I can't believe it. But, you know, when they hit 14, they're not going to like you. I promise you that.
I can believe that. Yeah, I can definitely believe that.
It may be starting already.
Fortunately not. Fortunately not.
But it will. And then at some point, you know, you may have terrible disappointments or tragedies. And you and Gloria have been married, what, 10 years now?
No, 19. We just had our 19th anniversary.
No way. I can't believe it. But you've worked through stuff. But everything ends at some point. So cherish what you have with the awareness that this too is just temporary. Just temporary. Wouldn't worry about it right now.
Okay.
But the thing to be mindful of is your love for your family transactional? Are you getting needs met? You know, I want this amount of affection. I want this amount of approval. Are my children extensions of my ego? Oh, did you see my kid? They did so well in the soccer game, you know. Just be checking that out.
Mm-hmm.
That's a major thing that parents tend to do, is they see their children as extensions of their egos.
Yeah.
But if it's an attachment that is problematic, I promise you, the Lord will bring it up for you. Are you still between positions employment-wise?
No, I just started my new job last
Okay.
week.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
But when you left the other job, were you all upset and fearful because you didn't have a job?
No, not at all.
Yeah. See, the Lord hands us these things in life. I think life is the best of all gurus. There was an opportunity to do yoga. Some people, if they were without a job, would have been very frightened. Sounds like you had a lot of trust in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I felt very, very comfortable kind of stepping into trying something new and just seeing where it led.
All right. Offline, you'll have to tell me all about it.
Okay, sounds good.
So don't worry about it for now. Just do your yoga. You don't have to make up problems right now. Believe me, when your kids become teenagers, then you'll get to practice the yoga.
I'll put that on the list.
I'll just share with you something my brother went through with his daughters. He had 3 girls. He was terrified that they would go out with someone who was like him because of the way he treated girls when he was a teenager. There's all sorts of things you get to look forward to. But that's in the future. Don't worry about it. Not today. You will be tested, I promise you. Anybody else have questions? All right, let's sit. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Puneet. Thank you, Deepa.
Thank you, Jim.
David, are you still online? You must have left.
No, I think he's still here. David is still here.
David Okada, are you still here?
David is on mute.
Oh, well, I'll ask him about his job later.
Okay. Bye, Jim. Good night.
Good night.